When the biggest news story involves Donald Trump potentially invading Greenland and capturing Venezuelan presidents, you'd think breakfast television would have plenty to talk about. But apparently, Good Morning Britain viewers are so tired of hearing about Keir Starmer's latest diplomatic tightrope walk that they're threatening to switch off entirely. GMB devoted significant airtime to covering Starmer's upcoming trip to Paris, where he'll join 35 countries for something called the Coalition of the Willing Summit. Sounds impressive, right? Except viewers aren't impressed. They're furious. They're accusing the show of being biased, of making Starmer look weak, of not understanding the complexities of dealing with Donald Trump. Some are even saying GMB is turning into GB News, which, if you know anything about British media wars, is basically the nuclear option of insults. Welcome back to UK Political Insight, where we cover the news about the news about the news. Let's break down why a report on Starmer going to Paris has caused such a massive backlash, and what it tells us about the state of British political coverage right now. So here's what happened. Good Morning Britain, ITV's flagship morning show, issued a major update about Keir Starmer preparing to join allies in Paris. On Tuesday, January 6th, 35 countries are uniting at this Coalition of the Willing Summit to demonstrate convergence between the US, European countries, and Ukraine. They'll discuss practical mechanisms for security guarantees for Ukraine following the conflict with Russia. This is actually important stuff. The war in Ukraine is still ongoing. The prospect of a ceasefire is being discussed, and how the West guarantees Ukrainian security in any peace deal is crucial. So GMB covering it makes sense. Except that's not what viewers are angry about. The context is what's causing the fury, because Starmer isn't just going to Paris to talk about Ukraine. He's going to put on a united front after the U.S. military raid on Venezuela and the capture of President Nicolas Maduro, and after concerns over President Trump's plans to intervene in Greenland, which the Danish Prime Minister said would bring about the end of NATO. So Starmer is heading to a summit where he has to balance supporting Ukraine, maintaining the special relationship with America, standing with European allies like Denmark, and not looking completely spineless as Trump does increasingly unhinged things. That's a diplomatic minefield, and GMB's coverage apparently focused on how difficult this position is for Starmer, which is what triggered the backlash. The X reactions, that's what we're calling Twitter now apparently, are absolutely fascinating because they reveal the deep divisions in how people view political coverage. One viewer fumed. Starmer has to tread a fine line. Is Reid that stupid that she doesn't know that and is trying to make it out it's because Starmer's weak? GMB is turning like GB News every day. So this viewer thinks Susanna Reid and GMB are being unfair to Starmer. They're arguing that dealing with Trump requires careful diplomacy, that you can't just call him out directly because he's the president of the United States and Britain needs to maintain that relationship. And they think GMB is deliberately framing Starmer as weak, when actually he's being strategic. The comparison to GB News is meant as an insult, because GB News is seen by many as right-wing and anti-labor. So saying GMB is turning into GB News is saying it's become biased against the government. Whether that's true is debatable, but the fact that viewers are making that accusation shows how sensitive people are to perceived bias. The other viewer agreed, saying, obviously Starmer should just be able to tell Trump he's a tyrant and Biden was right when he called them fascist, but Sky News' Beth Rigby and Good Morning Britain's Susanna Reid conveniently forget. You're not dealing with a normal president. This viewer is also defending Starmer. They're saying, look, we all know Trump is terrible, we all wish Starmer could just call him out, but the reality is you can't treat Trump like a normal president because he's unpredictable and vindictive. If Starmer publicly condemns Trump, Trump might retaliate by damaging the UK-US relationship. So Starmer is forced to be diplomatic even when Trump is being outrageous, and these viewers think the media is ignoring that context. A third viewer was more blunt. GMB is not the best way to begin any morning, let alone 2026. Time to switch off. That's just pure frustration. This person isn't even engaging with the substance, they're just saying the show itself is unwatchable, which suggests the issue isn't just this one segment about Starmer, it's the overall tone and approach of the program. People are tired of breakfast television that feels confrontational or biased or just exhausting. They want their morning news to be informative without being combative, and apparently GMB isn't delivering that. So what's really going on here? Well, there are a few layers. First, there's the genuine difficulty of Starmer's position. He's caught between multiple competing pressures. He needs to maintain good relations with America because the US is crucial for UK defense, intelligence, and trade, but Trump is doing things that are genuinely controversial and potentially illegal. If Starmer stays silent or is too accommodating, he looks weak and unprincipled. But if he criticizes Trump too harshly, he risks damaging the special relationship. It's a no-win situation, and reasonable people can disagree about how Starmer should navigate it. Some think he's being too weak. Some think he's being appropriately diplomatic. Second, there's the media's role in framing the story. The way GMB covered this clearly emphasized the difficulty and awkwardness of Starmer's position. The phrasing about his friend in the White House, the focus on him being sidelined by international events, the questioning about whether Trump broke international law, all of this frames Starmer as struggling and out of his depth. Now, that might be an accurate assessment. Starmer does look weak and uncertain in his handling of Trump, but it's also a particular editorial choice to emphasize that weakness rather than, say, emphasizing his diplomatic skill in balancing competing interests. The viewers who are angry think GMB is deliberately making Starmer look bad, and maybe they're right. Or maybe GMB is just accurately reporting that Starmer is in a difficult position and not handling it particularly well. The third layer is the broader exhaustion of Trump as a topic. Trump has been dominating news cycles for years. People are tired of it. They're tired of every political story somehow coming back to Trump. They're tired of the chaos, the unpredictability, the constant drama. And now Trump is back in office and already invading countries and threatening allies, and it's all starting again. For viewers who are just trying to eat their breakfast and get ready for work, the relentless focus on Trump and what Starmer should say about Trump is exhausting. They want to hear about domestic issues, about things that directly affect their lives, the cost of living, the NHS, local services. Instead, they're getting another segment about international diplomacy and Trump's latest outrage, and they're switching off. The accusation that GMB is turning into GB News is particularly interesting because it reveals the deep divisions in how people view political coverage. GB News was founded as an alternative to what it saw as left-leaning mainstream media like the BBC and ITV. It positions itself as offering views you won't hear elsewhere, being willing to challenge the establishment, giving a platform to voices that are ignored by other outlets. To its fans, it's refreshingly honest. To its critics, it's right-wing propaganda. So when someone says GMB is turning into GB News, they're saying it's become right-wing, biased, anti-labor. They're accusing it of abandoning impartiality in favor of attacking the government. Whether that's true is debatable, but the fact that viewers are making that accusation shows how sensitive people are to perceived bias. The comparison also highlights a fundamental tension in British broadcasting. The BBC and ITV are supposed to be impartial. They're regulated by Ofcom and have to maintain balance. But what does impartial mean in practice? Does it mean giving equal time to all viewpoints regardless of merit? Does it mean never criticizing the government? Does it mean always challenging the government? Different people have different expectations. Labor supporters want the media to give Starmer credit for navigating difficult situations and not to make him look weak. Conservatives and reform supporters want the media to hold Labor to account and highlight their failures. The media can't please everyone, so they end up pleasing no one. There's also the question of what viewers actually want from breakfast television. Do they want hard-hitting political analysis, or do they want lighter fare with maybe some news headlines? GMB has always tried to straddle that line. Some segments are serious political interviews, some are celebrity gossip, some are human interest stories. But increasingly, viewers seem to be rejecting the political segments entirely. They're tired of the confrontation, the gotcha questions, the obvious bias on both sides. They just want their news delivered straight, without the editorial spin. And when they don't get that, they threaten to switch off, which some are clearly doing based on these comments. The Starmer situation specifically is a microcosm of his entire premiership. He's constantly caught between competing pressures, trying to please everyone and ending up pleasing no one. On Trump, he can't criticize too harshly because he needs the relationship, but he can't stay silent because he'll look weak. On the economy, he can't raise taxes too much because people will revolt, but he can't cut services because labor's base will revolt. On immigration, he can't crack down too hard because it goes against labor values, but he can't be too permissive because voters are angry. He's paralyzed, and the media coverage reflects that paralysis. They can't decide if he's being strategic or just flailing. The evidence suggests the latter. Maybe he's playing 4D chess and we're all too dumb to see it. Or maybe he's just flailing. The evidence suggests the latter. The coalition of the willing summit itself is interesting because it shows Europe trying to figure out